All right, everybody, welcome back. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox, once again with my guest, Lisa Gus, the premiere, the guinea pig, in the LinkedIn guest series. What were we calling it last night? What did the guy call it?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Yes.
LinkedIn. We were with the Frenchman last night. He said, I was on a LinkedIn, something like that. It morphed over the period of the dinner. It was pretty funny. So, yes, once again, Lisa Gus, you went from Kentucky to did you study in Kentucky?
I did study in Kentucky, so I went to University of Louisville.
Okay.
And actually, well, supposedly Louisville is supposed to be all weird. It's actually one of our logos, like keep Louisville weird. To be
really
well, they're actually trying to be, I guess. I'm not sure what's weird about it, but they're definitely hanging on to it.
Doesn't seem weird. Yeah.
But we did have
nothing weird about bacon and bourbon.
No, but we did have the most amazing white squirrels at the University of Louisville.
White squirrels?
Yeah, they actually, I guess there was like a family of them and they bred out. So they were just beautiful and almost like a symbol of the college.
Interesting. Okay.
As well as the cardinal. And it was not bad. So I actually studied health and I studied Russian because I didn't need to do it.
Taking the easy class.
Well, that was the hope. So I actually got into it. But then my teacher had better ideas, so she actually made me translate the stuff for her that she was actually getting paid for, and I was, I guess, doing it for credit.
Yeah.
So that was actually fun. But I got my associate out of it as well, and eventually I even went into business, strategic development, because that was fun, and I guess that's what my mom was actually doing all her life. She's one of the first Russian programmers and developers, and then eventually she started running this big organization, like the energy department type of thing. And in fact, there is something I have actually never told anybody.
Here we go. Buckle up, everybody.
Well, when we came in, I was 12, and the FBI actually started trying to recruit her because her department was actually building the energy grid for the Baikonur, which is where all the big rockets actually were flying out of. So she did not speak a word. They tried to recruit her like 3 or 4 times. And she kept kicking me out of the room because for some reason, what did she think I was going to get recruited? But actually
they've had their eye on you.
But seeing my mom actually run this big, it's like 600 people. And of course, she was Jewish and she was a woman, so she couldn't be the head of it, but she was like the deputy of it. And actually, I think that's got me really interested in being in business. But of course, back then you had to be in business for the government.
Right.
But here you get to be in business for yourself.
Things are different now, for sure. Yeah.
So that's actually how I got my drive to that.
And so what was the progression from there? You were working for another company at first?
I did, yes. I was actually doing marketing. Actually, I got into Forex. That's how I met Eugene.
Okay.
So Eugene is actually my partner and my husband. So he was the developer and I was doing the marketing for them. Then Forex got basically regulated out of existence. So right now there is literally one, I believe, regulated Forex company in the US. And all of it is to prevent manipulation of the value of the dollar.
Yeah.
So eventually we ended up collaborating on building software and running a publishing house. So the software for publishing industry. Also concurrently, I became a producer for the first web show, like web TV show, actually back before Netflix was cool.
Right.
So I ended up actually doing almost single-handedly putting together a casting for this web show. It's called Lombardi Street. So it was like a nationwide casting and all of that. So it was interesting experience for me to kind of get more on the production side and putting stuff together. And then we kind of really went into the publishing space. We ended up creating software that was responsible for the sale of over 1.5 million books. It's still in use in the industry today. But the industry itself has changed dramatically because of Amazon.
Don't say the A word.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword. You got to hate them and you kind of have to use them and love them.
And I want to be him. I guess not that I want to destroy people's livelihoods, but I really want to reach that level of saturation.
I mean, there's like the success, the framework, but the reach and just the ability to impact so many people. That's who doesn't want that?
Well, have you actually read Emile Zola, Lady's Paradise?
Mm-mm.
So it's actually about the first department store in France. And it's so similar to our experience, except he doesn't seem to be that much of an asshole. But the idea that really is the same.
You can say that A word. Just don't say the other A word.
But that's really how we got into the blockchain space. And the blockchain space is all about creating the same reach, but for everybody. What we wanted to do is almost like network. You're talking about the web. So the web of little Amazons where you get to be the spider that's actually is talking to your own neighborhood.
So the software company, was that a SaaS company essentially?
Yeah, it is actually a SaaS company, and concurrently we use the same software to run for our own house, but we also gave it to other people.
Yeah, cool.
So,
and around what year was that when you really?
So we started in 2011. We really kind of went all the way up in 2013, 14. So we're one of the bigger independent publishing houses in North America. And then we just started seeing our clientele, but not just ours, but those in our space, going significantly down.
And were you doing both hard copy and digital?
Oh yeah, we were actually formats everywhere. Our books were in Barnes and Noble, in what was Borders, but when the Borders existed. So
I remember all that. Yeah. And how did you guys get that off the ground? Literally, it seems like a big undertaking.
Well, actually, at first we relied on the authors themselves. We were a collective.
Oh, okay.
And eventually the authors kind of wanted more of a guidance, and they just wanted to write and have us market and all of that. So it became a publishing house.
Yeah. And was this based out of Northern Virginia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, it was, we obviously, as any company, we registered in Delaware because taxes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, everyone registers there these days.
Yeah.
And in fact, I believe 99% of the companies that get funded are out of Delaware. And in fact, they tell you, if you want to get funded, are you in Delaware?
Right.
So, yeah, but we did run it out of Northern Virginia. I did not take advantage back then of everything that DC has to offer. I didn't care about regulation. I mean, it was all about actually editing and finding the best works. And in fact, we ended up selling some books to be produced for movies. So we are still waiting to see that done. But yeah, it was fun.
It's funny that what turns out to be kind of the important part is not what you thought it was at the beginning, right?
Definitely not.
So what for people listening that aren't familiar with the process, what's the cost of entry like for putting something like that together? What's the timeline like? What was your back work to get it off the ground? And then did you have to find investment? Was it treated more like a startup or?
So for that, we actually didn't need the investment. We were lucky in that we had savings, so we actually put those in.
Okay.
But you actually asked a really good question. How long does it take to get it off the ground? You can edit the book really quickly, especially if you have good editors and the writers are motivated. And so originally we would put them out like a month and a half out from actually submission. But that's the problem. To get into the actual store, for example, you need to give them 6 months leadway.
Right.
But before they actually take you need to have reviewers review it. And that takes another 6 months, like for example, for Kirkus.
Yeah.
So, eventually the timelines kept moving and moving. So towards the middle and the end of it, it would take about a year to a year and a half to get it put out.
And then how does that differ for digital release?
Oh, it's the same thing. I mean, you could do it, but the thing is you want to release them concurrently.
Right.
And that's why you needed to wait.
So you just gotta wait. Oh, that sucks.
And so, it actually sucks for the authors because there was one author, for example, and I'm so jealous because I cannot write myself as well. But that guy, he can actually literally write a $60,000 word book in 3 days. Like, how do you do this?
So he did like the real work, and then he just has to wait a year and a half for it to.
And so
see
basically,
eyes.
by then we had like 12 or 14 of his books waiting because he wanted us to put it. I was like,
right.
But I mean, he was kind about it. He was nice. He knew why it was taking so long. But that's really the problem. I mean, if you're doing it just digitally, if you're only catering to this specific kind of clientele that buys on Amazon, then you can actually release them as soon as they're out.
You do it quick, yeah.
But if you want to get them seen by the movie people, by the actual readers from the bookstores, which are repeatedly less and less now because everyone is buying from Amazon.
Are there still bookstores?
Well, there are coffee shops that actually also sell books.
No, in my neighborhood, there's actually this old classic bookstore on an old strip that's been, it's been a commercial drag for over 100 years. And It's like where they filmed Dog Day Afternoon with Al Pacino
Oh, that's cool.
and Smoke with who was in Smoke? Was Harvey Keitel in Smoke?
Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah. All those movies were filmed right along the
Mhm.
strips, not far from the restaurant. And there's an old bookstore there, and my wife takes the kids in there, and
See, I think that's the kind of bookstores that are going to survive because they're
Exactly.
built on loyalty.
we talked about that last night. It's like the really super intimate, community served, niche kind of brands. They're not going to be damaged completely by what's happening with companies like Amazon and with what's coming down the pipe with Cloud Kitchen. But you really have to focus on being a specific kind of brand and a specific kind of service and almost like an experience. So
Mhm.
a situation like that, you're going into, it's like nostalgia. You're literally offering nostalgia for like, our children who,
Mhm.
I mean, all we had was bookstores. I remember just going in bookstores and hanging out, and I would sit in there and read for hours before I picked the book that I was actually going to buy.
It's almost like a library.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. But you would buy a book before you left instead of just renting it. And our kids have heard us talk about that. So to actually take them to a place, and it's old, a lot of the books are used, and it's got that old bookstore smell to it, So for them, it's like this nostalgic experience that they've only heard about, and they get to experience it. I don't know how the lady stays open, especially in New York, because rents are super high, and it's not cheap to operate. And how
do
many?
they actually sell food in there? Because a lot of
No,
them-
it's literally just
Just
books.
books?
I mean, the whole space is probably about the size of this. So maybe they just have a really old lease or whatever. But so what were some of the challenges? I mean, you said one of them. You said the A word. In terms of your company, but you were saying it was industry wide.
It was because Amazon is now one of the biggest publishers. And it also happens to be one of the biggest producers of clothing, of basic necessities and what have you. So eventually, if you're producing it, you're going to muscle out everyone else.
Yeah.
So really, that was the challenge. It first created the ecosystem where you needed to be in it, especially if you were exclusive to it and they wanted you to be. But then you kind of lost everyone else. All the traction was on Amazon, and then the algorithm starts nicely pushing you out.
Yeah.
And so what do? You actually eventually either sell to Amazon or you close business.
Yeah.
Now our store is still there. Our company is still there, but it's sort of in hibernation because we came up with an idea of creating a marketplace that wouldn't do that and would allow you to work directly with the customers while still having an ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the blockchains would come in.
Cool. Well, we're going to take another break and we'll talk about blockchain because I don't know much about it. So hopefully it'll be a learning experience for everybody. When we get back, you're listening to the Entrepreneurial Well. We'll talk to you in a few.